3, 2, 1, we are live. Camera's right there. All right. So, was grading some of your tests. Let's see, I think I actually got through all of A hour yesterday. It's all graded as A hour. I'll probably spend tomorrow watching college football and grading at the same time. So, once I get all the grades or the test graded, then I will post them on Plus Portals. As usual, I think this went just exactly like every other test and grade. It was obvious who studied and it was obvious who didn't study, right? If you studied, you did really, really well. There really wasn't a whole lot of in between. It was either there was a lot of 34s, a lot of 33s, a few 32s, and then if you didn't get that, you're probably in the low 20s and then lower. So, it's pretty obvious who studied and who didn't. All I need is effort in this class. You may. Yes. As usual, all I need is effort in this class. Take the study guide, learn it, study it, get the work done. That's all I gotta do in this class to pass. So, any thoughts about the test before we move on? Anything you thought might not be totally fair? Maybe I should reconsider, or anything that you probably want me to know about it?
Is the test going in this quarter?
Yes, test will be in this quarter. So I have to get the grades in by Tuesday. So I'll certainly have them in. So grades will be by Tuesday. You guys will have your report cards on Friday, I believe, a week from today. I believe is what they said, but I could be wrong. All right, a couple of things before we get started. You'll notice the reading assignment has changed. So now we're in Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. That's where we're moving to next. You'll also notice, has anybody noticed the Kings project I wrote on the board? Yeah, you're like, what is that? So Monday I'll give you guys the Kings project. That'll be due Monday, November 8th. So I think that gives you two weeks to do it. Today's the 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. So I'll give you 2 weeks to do the Kings project. I've actually got them right here. At least part of it is. So what it'll be is you guys will go through the Bible on your own, and I've got a few boxes for you guys to fill out. So not difficult. It will take you though diving into the Bible itself, which will be fun. And I really like the Kings project. I think it's kind of fun to look through, and I'll explain that on Monday. So that's coming on Monday. I just wanted to write that on the board so that you guys can have a heads up on that already. So my advice to you would be get your planners out. If you have planners and use them, thank you. If you have planners and use them, I would encourage you to get them out right now. And on November 8th, write in big letters, King's Project due. I would also write on the Friday before it's due, make sure the King's Project gets finished. You want to do it right now? Go ahead and do, if you do that on your iPad, go ahead and do that right now. Yeah, those planners they give you though, those are legit. Definitely want to encourage you to use your planners. Good. Is there anything else before we get started today? Trying to think. No? Let's get started. Today's going to be a fun day. Well, kind of a fun day. We're going to tell stories today. Book of Judges. The plan, hopefully, is we'll get through the entire Book of Judges today. As you can tell, we're like flying through. Yes.
So it mentions the death of Joshua at the very end, but also mentions it in Judges. How come it's like 2 times?
Good question. So it mentions the death of Joshua at the end of the book of Joshua and at the beginning of the book of Judges. So I think the easiest answer, the most practical answer, is they have 2 different authors, right? And so since that moment kind of became the transition from the end of Joshua's time to the beginning of the time of the Judges, it makes sense to end and begin with that same thought, same idea. Even if it is the same author, that's probably what they're thinking too, right? That is the moment where we transition from the time of Joshua to the time of Judges. Pull that that out of here. So, time of the judges. Who leads the Israelites now? Who is the leader of the Israelites after Joshua? Who leads them? Say that again? Nope.
Levi?
Nope. Let's see. Any other guesses? Not Levi, not Judah? After the death of Joshua. Who leads people after the death of Joshua? Alright, so the first point. God is their leader. They don't have a human leader. There is nobody who takes Joshua's place. God is the one who leads the people. And that makes sense, right? God wants to be their God, He wants to be their leader, and so the people let God be their leader. Now the caveat is, they have to follow God's laws, right? If God's going to be their leader, they have to follow His laws. So we see that, things for a time are really good. They follow God's law. They find peace on their borders. Nobody goes after them, and they live in prosperity. But things are not always great, because they begin to stray from God's law, right? They get comfortable. They live with other people who have pagan practices, and they start to follow those pagan practices. They start to worship idols, and things start to go bad for them once they do that. So once they stray from the covenant, suffering and strife befall the Israelites, and this brings us into what's called the cycle of sin. And we're going to see this over and over and over again in the book of Judges. It becomes a pattern. And so we see the people sin. Number one, the people sin. They fall into sin. They fall into idolatry, worshiping other gods, not following God's commands. They fall into sin. And then what happens is a foreign nation oppresses them, and they fall into servitude. And then the people cry out to God. They remember, oh yeah, shoot, we probably should have been following God this whole time, right? We should have been doing God's will this whole time. God, we're sorry for this. We're asking you to save us. Supplication is the word for asking God for whatever, right? When you ask somebody, you are supplication. You're doing supplication. The fancy word. They like this word because they're all S's, if you notice. Let's see, that brings us to number 4. Let's do 4 over here. Salvation. So God then raises up a judge to save them, and they are set free. Now the word that they use here, I'm getting this from the timeline. They use silence here. I don't like the word silence here. That doesn't really get at exactly Yeah, that doesn't really get at what's happening here. I'm going to go with the word serenity. Serenity, anybody know what serenity means? Peace. Yep, peace. They find peace. That was a really garbage circle. It like started out so good, and then I'm like, oh crap, there's only 2 left. I hope your circles in your notes look better than that. No? So the people sin, they fall to another foreign nation, and they cry out to God to save them. God raises up a judge to rescue them, and then they find peace for a time, and they follow God's law again. And then they get comfortable, and then they fall back into sin. And then they're conquered again, and then they cry out to God to save them, and the cycle goes on and on and on and on. Do we recognize this pattern of sin in our own lives? Ooh. Do we recognize this pattern of sin in our own lives? We sin, we become slaves to that sin, we cry out to God to save us, they're going to confession. We're freed from our sins in confession, we find peace for a time, but then we sin again. This isn't just a story of the Israelites, the people, once upon a time. This is the story of us. This is the story of our own human nature, and how we sin, and how we do this over and over and over again. It doesn't stop. So that brings us to the time of the judges. So this is who the judges are, right? The judges are people God raises up in a specific time in a specific place to save the people. Judges are people whom God raises up in a particular time and place to save the people. So we go to Judges chapter 2, verse 11. We see the cycle played out, right? And the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They served the Baals. Let's talk about them too, right? We're going to see this word a lot. They served the Baals. And very common, that's kind of almost like a catch-all for all the idols. They served the Baals, and they forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were round about them, and bowed down to them. And they provoked the Lord to anger. They forsook the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the power of the enemies, of their enemies round about, so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for evil, as the Lord had warned. And the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in great distress. So already we see, right? Sin, servitude. Then the Lord raised up judges, supplication, salvation, who saved them out of the power of those who plundered them. And yet they did not listen to their judges, for they played the harlot after other gods who bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked, but obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did so. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and he saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. Whenever the judge died, they turned back and behaved worse than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. So they did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. All right, so we see, right, that whole cycle of sin. We can even label that. Cycle of sin. Now I can let you know right now, this will be on the test. So you might want to put a nice big old star next to it. This will be on the test. It's also probably going to show up in a homework assignment in your notes, so make sure you write it down. Make sure you have it here. And then the definition of judging will probably be there too. Good.
And when is the test going to be?
These will probably show up on homework assignments too. So notes will start to show up in homework assignments. So make sure you take the good notes, right? Good. All right, so that's who the judges are. That's what they do. Let's start in Judges chapter 4. All right. We're just going to do this because I wrote a lot. Judges 4. Deborah. She is the judge in chapter 4. This is the judge of, basically, this is the judge of girl power. Yes. So we see chapter 4. So she's not the first one. I've skipped over a few. One of the greater names is right above in chapter 3, verse 31. Shamgar, the judge Shamgar, another great name. All right, chapter 4. And the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Number 1, sin. After Ehud died. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Commander of his army was Sisera. All right, so there's servitude, right? And servitude under Sisera. He's the bad guy. Then the sons of Israel cried to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron and oppressed the sons of Israel cruelly for 20 years. All right, there's a supplication, right? They cry out to the Lord, help us. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at the time. So God raises up Deborah, the judge. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the country of Ephraim. The sons of Israel came to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun, and I will draw out Sisera. Right, so Barak is the good guy. He's the commander of the Israelite army. And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go, but if you'll not, right, let's get this because I want to get to the best of the story. So he drives him out, and then Sisera fled on foot to the tent of Jael. So Sisera flees, and he flees to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. So he's in Jael, her tent. Yep. Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, have no fear. Jael is an Israelite, so he flees to an Israelite tent. Turn aside, and so she turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. Milk, huh? Milk was a bad choice. Nice. Nobody? It's okay. And he said to her, stand at the door of the tent, and if any man comes and asks, is anyone here, say no. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to him, and drove the peg into his temple, till he went down to the ground. So Jael kills Sisera. Right? And so tent pegs, right? This tent peg's probably this big, probably really big and long. She takes the hammer, takes the tent peg as he's laying down asleep, and boom, drives it through his head. Yeah, I know, right? And so Jael kills the enemy of the Israelites. Kind of gross, isn't it? Pretty awesome. Alright, so chapter 4, verse 23. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the sons of Israel, and the hands of the sons of Israel were harder and harder on Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. Chapter 5 is the Song of Deborah. All right. So that's the story of Deborah. Good job, right? Judges 4. Let's go to Judges chapter 6. Gideon. Chapter 6 begins, the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. We're back to number 1. Yep. Back to number 1. The sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. The Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed over Israel. Because of Midian, the sons of Israel made for themselves dens which are in the mountains, and caves in its strongholds. All right, so then they became under servitude of the Midians. So it's different people every time that God uses. Verse 7, when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord on account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the sons of Israel. All right, so 3, right? There's supplication, they cry out to the Lord, and the Lord gives them a prophet. And he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians, and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not pay reverence to the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell, but you have not given heed to my voice. Right? The prophet speaks on behalf of God to his people, and he's reminding them, hey, this is why you're in the mess you're in. So we see Gideon is called. In verse 28, we see Gideon destroys the altar of Baal, right? Gideon destroys the altar of Baal. He's got that zeal for God, and so he tears down the altars. But he's not convinced that God is actually calling him. So we see in verse 36, the sign of the fleece. Gideon said to God, if you deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on the ground, then I shall know that you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said. All right, so he's really testing God, right? He puts the fleece down on the ground. And he says, all right, in the morning when I wake up, if there's dew on the fleece, but there's not dew anywhere else, I will know that you want me to, you're going to deliver Israel by my hand. Does that make sense? Good. And it was so, when he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. So we're not talking a small amount of dew, right? Like, that's a lot of dew. He wrings it out and it fills the bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak but this once. Please, make me trial only this once with the fleece. Please let it be dry only on the fleece, and on the ground let there be dew. So he gets his sign, and is he content with it? No. He says, all right, let's try this then. To really let me know that you're going to free the Israelites by my hand. Now we're going to do it the opposite way. I'm going to lay the fleece down, and if the fleece is dry, but there's dew everywhere else, then I'll know. And God did so that night, for it was dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground there was dew. All right, so then he's like, all right, I guess I kind of know then, right? You think he's trying to back onto this a little bit?
Yeah.
That's what it kind of sounds like, doesn't it? All right, and Gideon and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, the people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into your land, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, my own hand has delivered me. All right, so God's basically telling Gideon, your fighting force is too large. You need to make it smaller. Has any general ever said that in world history? No, right? You always want more people, right? More is better when it comes to war. God's like, no, you got too many. Because if you win, you're probably going to think you did this on your own. I want you to know that I saved you, not yourselves. Now proclaim in the ears of people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him go home. You can go home if you want. And Gideon tested them. 22,000 returned and 10,000 remained. Woo! Yikes. That's a lot of fearful people. 2/3 left. So they still have 10,000. The Lord said again to Gideon, the people are still too many. 10,000, way too many. We got to cut that number down even more. Gideon's probably sitting there going, okay, I guess. Take them down to the water and test them for you there. And he of whom I say to you, this man shall go with you, shall go with you. And any whom I say to you, this man shall not go with you, shall not go. So take only who I tell you to take. Everyone that laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, you shall set by himself. Likewise, everyone that kneels down to drink. Does that make sense? Those who basically put their face in the water and drink like a dog, put over this way, and those who kneel down and cup the water and bring it to their face, set them aside. And the number of those that lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people knelt down and drank water. So 9,700 men knelt down and drank water. 300 lapped it up like a dog. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300, I will deliver you and give the Midianites into your hand. So make everyone else go home. Yikes. Right? He went from 33,000 men to 300. And God says, that's the army I want. Those 300 men were going to fight like dogs. I want them. And then, what do you think happens?
They win?
They not only win, they rout the Midianites with 300. Cool, right? There's more to it, but that's the part that I wanted. God really wants them to know you can trust in me, number one. You can trust in me. Yeah, don't doubt me, right? Trust in me and I'm going to save you. Trust in me and I'm going to save you. All right, so Judges 6.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we know if this was historically accurate, or is this like the historical narratives that are
It's probably a little bit of both, right? There's some historical accuracy and there's some theological statements being made.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
And that's probably going to be mostly true to the end, when we're in the historical narrative. Mostly historically true, probably some details that have been flourished. All right, Judges chapter 12, verse 11. Who is the judge here? Chapter 12, verse 11. Elon Musk. No, just Elon. Elon is the judge. After him, Elon, the Zebulunite, judged Israel. He judged Israel 10 years. Then Elon, the Zebulunite, died and was buried at Aijalon in the land of Zebulun. Cool story. That's it. That's all we know about Elon. He judged for 10 years and that was it. So some we have really long stories, and some we have really, really short stories. The story of Samson follows shortly after that. Yes. Oh, you're probably right. 58? Thanks for letting me remind me, Jay, it's Friday. 57 or 58? Back to Judges 3. Judges chapter 3, the greatest story never told. We'll see how far I get into this. If not, I'll have to finish it on Monday. The greatest story never told. So, we see the same thing happening, right? We see the sons of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel. So here we've got Judges 3, King Eglon. Eglon, translated, means fat. This is a very fat man. He gathered himself and the Ammonites and the Amalekites and went and defeated Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms, that's Jericho. The sons of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, 18 years. But when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, son of Gera. So chapter 3 is Ehud. The greatest story never told. He's a Benjaminite. He's a left-handed man. This matters that he's left-handed. The sons of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, king of Moab. So Ehud goes to the king, and he's going to present him tribute. And basically what he says is, hey, can I have an audience with the king? We've got something special for him. And so the king says, sure, you can meet with me one-on-one in the cool upper chamber. What's the cool upper chamber? It's where he goes to the bathroom. He has such disrespect for the Israelites. Yeah, you can meet with me while I'm on the pot. Right? So, he does. He meets with them. Now, there's a couple of things when that happens, right? He doesn't have his guards there, right? So he's really meeting with them one-on-one. The guards are outside the cool upper room. The guards checked him. They checked his right leg. Because for a dagger, right? Because most people are right-handed. They didn't check his left, because he's a left-handed man. So he gets in there, this guy says, I got a special gift for you. Pulls out the dagger, stabs him right in the, I shouldn't do that to you. He stabs him right in the belly. Remember, what's his name? King Eglon, which means fat. The Bible here, it describes how when the dagger sinks into his belly, the fat rolls roll over the dagger, and he buries the dagger into his belly. Kills him on the spot, or on the pot. Now, the guards outside are looking at their watches going, man, we've been there a really long time. I don't know what they have to go. And then after a while, they're like, all right, something's up. So they open the door, and he's dead. But Ehud is nowhere to be found. There's only one way out. How did Ehud get out? So, yeah, he goes, there's only one way out. And he goes, it's so gross, right? There's no windows. There's one way out. And he goes right through there. And he's out and he's free and he saves the people. Ladies and gentlemen, the word of the Lord. The greatest story never told in the Bible. I can't imagine why this story is never told. I think so too.
I think that's my favorite chapter.
Judges chapter 3. You're welcome. Have a great weekend. I'll see you at Mass. Just remember to stay on your gun before Mass starts.